I've always had an on and off again relationship with the Resident Evil franchise, which to me I always found is kind of odd because of how much I love the Devil May Cry franchise and how strong of a connection those two franchises have. But I never shared the same connection with the horror juggernaut. My first time playing anything that is Resident Evil would have actually been Resident Evil 4. I don't exactly remember the details, but a family member of mine gave me a copy of Resident Evil 4 for the PS2. That particular playthrough though never really lasted that long. I got up to the first time you interact with those bug enemies that turn invisible, and I don't remember the why, but I did lose interest and I kinda dropped the game. I had a friend at the time that loved the Resident Evil franchise and it was his main lifeblood, right? And he had a copy of Resident Evil 4 before the GameCube, back when that was the only copy, that's what he got. He wanted a copy of the PS2 version that I had, so you could play the Separate Ways campaign with Ada Wong. I don't remember the exact handoff we did, but we did end up trading and I gave him my copy of Resident Evil 4. I would later be reintroduced to the series by that very same friend. He wanted to do a co-op playthrough of Resident Evil 5, and I decided I'd give it a try. I know that game leaning towards the action elements bothers a lot of the longtime fans, but I will have to say, I did enjoy my playthrough with my friend, and ever since then the series has kind of stayed in my circle of games that I've been more aware of than others. But I never really went back to play some of the earlier games in the franchise until the remakes started dropping. I would eventually play the original Resident Evil remake, and then Resident Evil 2 remake, and then Resident Evil 3 remake. Yes, I know the 3 remake is very different than the original 3. I haven't gotten there. Maybe you guys can convince me to play the original 3 or go back to the original titles before the remakes and all that jazz. But I did play Resident Evil 4 remake, and I did play Resident Evil 4 the VR version. I will say, funny enough, probably my favorite VR game that isn't Beat Saber. It's really good. If you have the option to play it somehow, it's definitely worth it. That all being said, I never properly returned to the original Resident Evil 4 to properly experience the original title that kind of changed Resident Evil as a franchise and in no small way affected gaming in a micro and macro level. It is insane how important this game was and how the future really is written by this title and its success. It's time to settle a score with Resident Evil 4. So the story here begins with a narration done by Leon describing the legal downfall of Umbrella Corp. And I don't know if it's just me. I'm genuinely reaching out. I'm curious. Does this bother anyone that Umbrella Corp, the main antagonistic force of the, let's say, first arc of Resident Evil, gets off-screened? I know it gets mentioned later on in the game, but it's more of a spiritual Umbrella Corp being backed by Wesker, and not Umbrella Corp is back. So the main big bad evil company is off-screened, and nobody seems to be upset about it, but I am wondering, I want to hear your feedback, because to me it would bug the shit out of me. But anyways, as Leon is narrating, he talks about what happened to him after Resident Evil 2. The rookie cop, on the worst first day anyone could have on their job, apparently got noticed by the US government, and they were impressed. They took him in and made him a special agent. Good for him. And now he's being sent on a special mission. The mission in question? To rescue the president's daughter, who has been kidnapped. Ashley Graham is her name, and she loves yelling for help. Leon! 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 I need help, Leon! Once we get into gameplay, it's immediately apparent how different this game is to the previous entries. Instead of being the over-the-top tank control scheme that we knew of before, this is a third-person, over-the-shoulder gameplay style. The first in the series to do so, and one of the most important entries in gaming to do so. Before this game, when you look up third-person shooters, it was more common to have a loose camera, like an action-adventure style. Tomb Raider is a good example of a third-person style adventure with shooting as your main combat option, and it was more of a loose camera structure versus strict to your shoulder, better for aim and gun control. Resident Evil 4 might not have been the first to do this gameplay style, I don't know for sure, but I would say it's definitely the most important game to do this style. If Resident Evil 4 did not come out and succeed the way it did, we wouldn't have third-person shooters the way we know it. Gears of War, no matter how different that game is, only exists in its control function because Resident Evil 4 walked. Now again, this new gameplay style does unfortunately end up giving towards more action-based gameplay, which is why Resident Evil 5 and then later on 6 become more action-based, as well as other games that use this control scheme is more actiony. Hell, even this game, once you get towards the ending of it, it becomes more of an action shooter than a horror-themed adventure, right? But I do have to say, the eerie feeling you get in the village at the beginning, as well as the audio design in this game, really helps keep that horror aesthetic for a while, and once you start leaving it, you do come back to horror. With the different enemy and boss designs, they really do master that gross horror aesthetic. Things like the Regenerator freak me out, man. The way it wiggles and twists around, I think that's a really cool thing they got going on here. In general, this game is the best mix between that horror and action elements that Resident Evil kind of tries to teeter with as the series goes on. Now, part of that might be because of the awkward, more intentional movement that you have in this game. You can't aim and move at the same time. You walk at a slower pace, you can run, but there is an overall slower pace to your movement, and in order to actually cause damage to an enemy, you have to stop and aim and shoot. Even if you're using a knife, you have to stop and take out your knife to cut. And I think that stop-and-go nature makes you have to think before striking. You have a villager coming after you, what are you going to do? Are you going to try to dodge around them, or are you going to hold your ground and shoot them? And that intentional movement is very important to what holds this to that horror standard. I touched on it a bit earlier, but the audio design in this game is really good. Now, I don't just mean the music. The music creates a great atmosphere and I love it. But the different sound effects in particular build up. You have your atmospheric sounds, right? You'll hear the moans and the groans of enemies around you. And hell, sometimes it sounds like there's something right behind you and there's nothing near you. And that kind of creates a little moment where your hair's on end, right? On top of that, you have the smushy sound effects when you get a good headshot, or when the plagas come out of the human body. Those sounds are really good. And the action sounds. Your gun firing, you picking up ammo, you organizing your inventory. Oh my god, that's an entirely different pro. I love the inventory system in this game. Everybody loves the inventory system in this game. It is so fun to play this weird game of Tetris with what you can hold and what you can't hold. It also makes it so you can't stash endless ammo for the end of time, and it keeps you like involved with what you have at all moments and making sure you keep track. Oh, I have this many grenades, this many bullets for this gun, I have this and this gun. It keeps things revolving. Having a revolving inventory like this gets you on edge and keeps you in the moment. Helps with horror and action actually, because you can have a little bit pick up and go nature. When you're stressed out, you're out of ammo, oh my god. It's good for both gameplay elements, oddly enough. Another thing that matches the horror and action is actually the cutscenes. Yes, I know the dialogue is hammy and janky as all hell. One, that matches Resident Evil in its entirety from beginning till now. And two, I eat up how much of a smart-ass dick Leon is shooting his one-liners non-stop throughout this game.
Where's everyone going? Bingo? Thanks. That should keep me company, cause boredom kills me. Why don't you do us all a favor and leave before the audience gets pissed off? I don't ever remember being a part of your crappy script. Don't fall for this old trick. Your right hand comes off? Sadler, you're small time. Very cute. Looks like this is it.
Ugh, it stinks.
Sure does.
No way, Leon.
Way?
Are you out of your mind?
I knew you'd be fine if you landed on your butt.
You...
And again, is that you?
Finally, the
line's jack-free.
Hey, Hunnigan, no glasses.
Forget the glasses. What's the status of the mission?
I've rescued the subject. We're returning home.
You did it, Leon.
Thanks. You know, you're kind of cute without those glasses. Give me your number when I get back.
May I remind you that you're still on duty.
Story of my life.
But back on the subject, how do the cutscenes match the horror genre? My answer is the QuickTime events. Yes, I know, they're a tired, old mechanic that nobody really likes anymore, except I kinda still do love QuickTime events, I have a lot of fun with them. But I remember at the time, I think it was X-Play, if anyone remembers that show, but I remember reviewers saying that this game is so scary, you can't even relax during the cutscenes. To help with the horror element, you had to keep yourself paying attention to the cutscenes. If you don't, you'll die. And that is actually a really cool take that the modern day gaming landscape doesn't really play with anymore. And I really do like the idea of using QuickTime events as a way to keep you on edge even during those times where you're supposed to be relaxed, like a cutscene. Another horror element about this game? Escort quests. You see, like mentioned before, the main goal of this game is to save the president's daughter. Now what happens when you have her and now you're trying to escape the island? Oh, escorting. An escort quest is a good 25% of this game. Luckily, this game gives you reprieves by having moments of Ashley being recaptured, so you don't have to deal with just an escort quest the entire game. But when you have to deal with her, my God! She gets stuck on level geometry. She gets in the way of your shots. She tries to duck out of the way, but sometimes she still gets hit anyways. If you leave her alone for too long, she either gets attacked or she gets recaptured, and if you wait too long, she gets taken out of the room and it's game over. Everything you do revolves around you babysitting her. Oof. At least in the regular playthrough, that is. As you complete the game more and more, you unlock different bonuses, like endless rockets for your rocket launcher, or really cool weapons, and cool alternate costumes. One of those costumes for Ashley is a suit of armor, and she cannot be taken or even affected when she has armor on. So at least you have that kind of bonus. If you really like this game, the more you play it, the more lenient it gets. That's kind of cool. I love games that incentivize replay value, and Capcom really does master that. As you're playing through this game, the three main, I guess, biomes is the word I'm gonna use to describe it. Three main settings that you experience. You have the opening village segment. You feel the most secluded to yourself. You're just trying to survive while you're surrounded by these crazy lunatics. The beginning survival segment is such a good way to start this game proper. The village chief, big, menacing, aggressive. You're kind of scared of him, and when you fight him, he's even scarier. The next segment is the castle. This is when the game becomes a little less scary and a little more campy. I mean, Leon and Salazar's interactions together say it all truly. Though the fight with Salazar is actually really cool and a very good set piece for the game if you ask me in total. The next biome is the military complex / laboratory area. This is where the game mostly becomes action-packed and more of a third-person shooter action game, right? Though this is also where the regenerators are, and the regenerators are probably the most scariest of the game. So you have a little bit of that give or take. I like that. Those are the three main biomes or sections or whatever, and each section has their own variety of aesthetics and different things that they do with it to play with that aesthetic, so you're not getting too bored of it. Like I mentioned before, the village is my favorite segment. I think it's the best part that feels the most Resident Evil to me. A very biased take, I know, so I ask you as well, what would you say is your favorite segment of Resident Evil 4? I think that's all the big things I wanted to say about this game, so I guess let's wrap this up with a quick story synopsis. We left him off at the beginning of his mission to rescue the president's daughter. Leon ends up traveling to some undisclosed village in Spain. Here he finds all the villagers being part of a cult called the Los Iluminados. This cult is deeply involved with the kidnapping of Ashley. They are all aggressive and seen as incredibly violent from the get-go. While searching for Ashley throughout the village, he bumps into Lewis. Luis is a former Los Illuminados researcher, and at that moment they're both knocked out and Leon is infected with the Las Plagas. Leon will come to find that the Las Plagas is how everybody's being controlled in the village. These Las Plagas are parasite, and this parasite does have a hierarchy, and those who have the top parasite have control over everybody else who has it as well. After they're both captured, they do wake up in a completely different area, and they escape their particular situation, let's say. While Leon's making his way out, he bumps into a very useful man, simply known as the Merchant. And fun fact, if you wanted to, you can kill him. And if you kill him, he does not show up anywhere else in the game, and you just kind of stop having a merchant. Bad idea, don't do it. He's a wonderful person, very useful to have on your side, and I just kind of love him. Leon then continues his search to find Ashley. While doing so, he finds this very mysterious church he's unable to get into. Well, looks like we gotta get a key, and the only way forward is across the lake. Now, if you ever get this strange feeling that maybe you should shoot at the lake, please don't, because if you noticed, there might be something kinda, well, fishy in it. While Leon does try to take this boat across the lake, he does unfortunately encounter Del Lago, and he does have to fight Del Lago to pass. Del Lago's more of a gimmicky fight, which means there are some awkward control scheme issues here that make it hard to dodge and properly, move around him. Either way, Leon defeats him, almost dies in the process, but makes his way to the other side. But due to the effects of the Plagas in his body, it's taking its toll on him slowly, and with the fatigue of what just happened, he kind of just collapses unconscious. He wakes up, and it's now night. Scary thing about the night, though, the Plagas inside the villages are a lot more active and, capable of bursting out of their heads, and becomes a lot more of a difficulty to take these enemies down. Leon is, however, able to gain access to the key, and then returns back to the church. On his way back, though, he does encounter El Gigante. Basically, he's just a giant that hits hard, and you have to dodge around him and shoot him. When you shoot him enough, the Plagas comes out of his spine, you jump up and cut it, or give it a couple shots, and you're pretty good. Though the fight becomes a lot easier if you were a good person earlier in the game and you rescued the dog. You see, way earlier there was a dog and it's crying and it's stuck in a bear trap. If you are a good person to your soul, you would have saved that dog, and later on in this fight, he shows up and helps you. How's that for karma? From there, Leon's finally able to get back to the church. He uses the key, gets into the church, finds Ashley. Everything's good. We now just have to escape. But while trying to escape, we bump into the master of the Illuminados, Sadler, and he does sick some villagers after you, and you gotta get out fast before they all get you. Before sending the villagers to attack them, though, Sadler does inform both Leon and Ashley that they do have a Plagas inside of them, and he does try to goat them into just staying with them and, just become one of us. It'll be great. It'll be wonderful. And they say no, and then he sends the villagers after them, and then they have to escape. Escape to where, you may be wondering? Well, we have an extraction point to get to. Let's go! Unfortunately, they don't make it too far before their plans get derailed. You see, the escape helicopter has been shot down, and now they have to find another way to escape. Well, at the moment, there's a crap load of these goddamn villager cultists coming after us, and there's a cabin for me to hide into. We gotta go. Luckily, inside that cabin, we have Luis, so he can help us survive this almost endless onslaught. But not before he comments on Ashley.
I see that the president's equipped his daughter with ballistics, too.
How rude!
Ashley then hides, which makes this segment a non-issue, just its own challenge instead of having to worry about her surviving and dealing with the endless onslaught. Thank you, game designers, for that. Anyways, eventually we survive it, and Leon and Luis go their separate ways. From there, heroes travel down a canyon. There's two different paths you can take. One leads to another fight with El Gigante, the other one is a fight with 2 chainsaw women. Pick your poison, you can do both if you want to. Either way, you make it past it. You continue through some game design elements, you take a gondola, you go here, you go there, and eventually you bump into a weird shack off into its corner, and in that shaft is your next boss fight, the Village Chief. In this brief synopsis, I did miss out on the multitude of times you bump into the Chief throughout the village segment. Just know you bump into him quite a bit, and he's a menacing force. Whenever you bump into him, he takes you down. There's also a whole missable cutscene that involves him. If you wanted to experience that, it's out there. And I think in the remake, it's not skippable at all. Actually, that's a whole other separate subject. Fun fact, in Resident Evil 4, there's a plethora of cutscenes you never have to see, and you can completely skip by not going in a certain direction. In the remake, they make that less of an option, but I think that's kind of cool that you can have more story if you want to explore a little bit more, you know? The boss has 2 phases, both of them are frightening, both of them involve spines and weird, crazy arm thing, but you beat him, and you collect his eye, you're then able to continue through the world, and you make your way to a castle! And there's no turning back because the villagers are on your ass. So you make your way into the castle as the only safe haven that you think exists. But you're wrong. From here we meet up with another one of Sadler's acolytes. We're talking about Salazar, who then is able to jam your communication method with Washington. No more support from here. RIP. Leon and Ashley end up separating again because Ashley has a little bit of a coughing fit and she freaks out and runs into a clearly trapped wall, and she's gone. And now Leon has to spend a portion of the level re-finding Ashley again. Great. But not before doing probably the hardest part in the game. Everybody knows it. It's the water room. The water room is the most difficult thing I've ever done in this game, and it will never be topped. I swear it, man. But anyways, we now have to find Ashley again. While searching though, we do bump into Ada Wong, the Ada Wong from Resident Evil 2, the one who apparently died. Well, she's back from the dead, or never died to begin with. And thus, the will they won't they relationship between Leon and Ada begins once again with a brand new fire lit underneath their passion. There's a whole separate campaign called Separate Ways I mentioned earlier, in which you play as Ada throughout this adventure, her perspective, and you really get to see what she's trying to do here, what her goals are. But to sum it up, Ada is now trying to obtain a sample of a dominant species plaga for her employer while also double-crossing Wesker, who she is employed by but not really. Basically, Wesker thinks she's there with him, but she's really there for her other organization. It's a little up-down secret spy stuff, but you know, we all love a good spy thriller after all. And to its core, I don't think we're ever supposed to truly understand or feel safe with Ada, but we do also like her. So they try to play that a bit, and they do a pretty good job. As Leon searches for Ashley, he bumps into Lewis one more time, and in his hand he has drugs. These drugs can help suppress the plaga, which will increase Leon and Ashley's chances of making it out of here alive. He also has a sample of that dominant species plaga we mentioned earlier. His hopes was to give it to the US government so he can get out of this situation scot-free. But unfortunately, Sadler comes up out of nowhere and impales him with his weird, gross, fleshy tentacle thing. At this moment, I do wonder, why is Sadler not going to, I don't know, attack Leon too? I guess he really does believe the plaga is going to take over and he's going to have another minion, but why risk it? I would kill Leon now. Doesn't matter anyways. He leaves with the plaga sample and just goes away. Leon does have a heartfelt reaction to Louise's death. Very sad, but we have a mission. And in this very room is Ashley screaming for help. We break her free, and then she has to escape her way back up to you. And you get to play a nice little Ashley-only segment. Kinda cool. Not really many ways to defend yourself, so it's more horror. I like it. And we're back to Leon. Unfortunately for Leon, very fortunate for me as a player, Ashley does get captured again real quickly. In a rush, Leon tries to chase his way to Ashley, and he's hit by a wall that is Salazar himself. He has to finally do this fight. I did skip a fight in my short synopsis here, and I do want to just give the time to mention it. There's a monster you fight called Vertigo. It is Salazar's, as he says, right-hand man. In order to do any real damage to him, you have to freeze him before you shoot him. Ironically, before getting here, I did get my hands on a rocket launcher, so after freezing him, it might have only took me one hit to kill him, but otherwise, he is an incredibly difficult boss that takes quite a long time to handle if you don't know what you're doing. But I digress. We do take on Salazar. Pretty easy fight, actually. You got this floating eye, you shoot him, he becomes vulnerable, and then you shoot him. It's really easy to dodge him, he's not hard to handle in the slightest, but it is a cool set-piece kind of boss. During this process, though, Leon does learn that Ashley was sent to the military facility island, and now we have to make our way there after defeating Salazar. Ada does help us with a boat. We drive our way over and on to the final act of this horrifying play. This island is again where the game becomes more of a Call of Duty type of game, if you know what I mean, more action-based shooting. There is some lore here because it is a research military facility. Also seem to have skipped the part when you bumped into Jack Krauser. You know, the military guy that Leon used to work with. I guess he's supposed to be some kind of rival-based character. He's kind of a non-starter to begin with. His boss fight's kind of cool though, and they establish that he's the one who physically kidnapped Ashley. Also, lore-wise, he is pretty important because he's kind of like a prototype of what Wesker becomes in Resident Evil 5, so there's that too. But after that, and all the numerous encounters you have with all of Sadler's minions, you are finally able to save Ashley for the final time. But before you make your way out, you have a little bit of a, parasite inside your body. You do find a way to get the parasite out of you, which is pretty good, and now you're trying to escape, but Sadler's in the way, and you gotta take down the cult leader before you can wrap a pretty little bow on this, right? You have a, quite frankly, pretty easy boss fight to take down. At the end, you get a rocket launcher to do your final shot. Thank you, Ada, for the rocket launcher. She then sets off some bombs on the island, and you have to escape. She does give you a key to a jet ski. You get that key, and you escape, while Ada makes her way with that sample, because she does take it from Sadler's body after you kill him. I think I mentioned some stuff out of order, but I think that's the whole story of Resident Evil 4, right? In a quick little synopsis, bow. Overall, I can say this is a really fun game, and considering how old it is, it holds up very well. The game mechanics feel kind of old and a little, stiff. But that fits the horror genre that's trying to do, and everything is well organized around the gameplay design. It is one of those things where the control matches the game that they made. Good on you. Great audio, like I mentioned. The story's fun to experience. It's not the most scariest thing to go through, but it is a fun adventure with a horror theme to it, Definitely worth playing. It's worth playing one of the progenitors of a third-person shooter that we know today, but also it's really cool to just play and go back to. RE4 Remake does make a lot of good changes, don't get me wrong, but the original will always have a good place in my heart, and I'm happy I went through this little experiment with it. So yeah, I'd like to know what everybody else thinks about Resident Evil 4. I know it seems to be a fan favorite in general, and I have to say I'm one of those. And yeah, that's kind of it for today's video. I want to thank everybody for watching, for hanging out, for sticking by. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you ever want to. It does help me a lot. And yeah, thanks again, and have a fantastic day, evening, night, whenever you're watching this. See you later.